Good evening from London. Performing a solemn duty for their Queen and saying a heartfelt farewell to their dear granny. Her Majesty's 8 grandchildren have stood guard around her coffin for 15 silent minutes. Onlookers describe their joy at seeing the family united and their gratitude at the privilege of witnessing the moment.
Brothers in arms leading cousins in grief. The Queen's 8 grandchildren standing guard around her coffin. It's the first time in history second-generation royals have performed the Vigil of the Princes, following in the footsteps of their parents who performed the same solemn duty the night before. Silent and stoic, the sight stirred up strong emotions in those who filed past.
I don't think I'm going to forget it. Yeah, it was lovely to see them all together, united, because that's what family's about, isn't it? That we're all together, united together in grief and supporting each other. So how lovely was it to just see that?
The new Prince of Wales led his family into Westminster Hall. William and Harry, both officers in the Household Cavalry, both wearing the Blues and Royals #1 dress. Of the two, only Harry saw action in combat, but only he needed the blessing of the King to wear the uniform. Duty to the Queen has seen the brothers put their rift aside for the mourning period at least. And royals rarely in the spotlight were now at the forefront. The Queen's first grandchild, Peter Phillips, the 44-year-old son of Princess Anne. James Viscount Seven, Her Majesty's youngest grandchild, the 14-year-old showing strength beyond his years. His sister, Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor. Their parents, Prince Edward and the Countess of Wessex, watching on. The cousins shared summers in Balmoral, Christmases at Sandringham, and the love of their grandmother. Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice writing this tribute. We all miss you terribly. You were our matriarch, our guide, our loving hand on our backs, leading us through this world. For now, dear Granny, all we want to say is thank you. For making us laugh, for including us, for picking heather and raspberries, for marching soldiers, for our teas, for comfort, for joy. Unlike the previous night's royal vigil, the timing was unannounced. Visitors who started queuing during the very chilly night warmed by the unexpected sight inside the Westminster Hall.
It was amazing because I've never seen the royal family before.
It was good to see them all together as a set of grandchildren, given the things that have happened over the last few years. So I think that was really good to see the family together.
In less than 24 hours, this formal lying in state will end. There will be soon a permanent place for the public to pay their respects.
It might be surprising to know that in a city like London, which is full of statues, there isn't one for Queen Elizabeth II. The plans are underway to remedy that after her funeral.
With her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria's memorial so prominent at Buckingham Palace, Elizabeth's memorial may adorn this plinth at Trafalgar Square, which has been conspicuously vacant for 20 years.
And Brett McLeod joins me from Westminster. Brett, security is certainly ramping up around London ahead of the Queen's funeral.
Well, Pete, it's an operation the likes of which has never seen before here in the capital, perhaps anywhere in the world quite like this. Everywhere you look, there are hundreds of police, 20,000 on the streets of London, all focused on this particular small area where hundreds of dignitaries will be arriving in just over 24 hours for the start of the Queen's funeral. It's expected some 1 to 2 million people will turn out to watch that funeral on the streets and the cortege afterwards. Perhaps the biggest the world's ever seen, and yet surprisingly, still a relaxed atmosphere here on this Sunday morning, Pete.
Brett, thanks so much. It was a meeting of warmth and respect. Our Prime Minister today sitting down for a conversation with the new King. Anthony Albanese was among several world leaders to attend Buckingham Palace, where he offered Australia's condolences to a mourning monarch.
Prime Minister of Australia, Your Majesty.
A new chapter in our history sealed with a handshake.
Your Majesty.
Charles our King, but the reign of the Queen very much in their hearts.
I know my father would be hugely touched. And by all the tributes.
Well, Australians have been really affected. You have that sense of grief, but also gratefulness.
For all those years of service.
I know, and thank God we had 70 years. That's the great thing to remember, I think.
It's remarkable, but because for you it's a very personal loss.
Well, I know.
But he's a king with a Commonwealth to rule, and it was straight down to business.
The King and I had a very good discussion. He has a close relationship with Australia.
One by one, the other Prime Ministers within the realm were granted a royal audience. Earlier, the King's men and women in the Commonwealth were treated to a lunch at the palace. Australia's Governor-General David Hurley mingling with the royal family he represents and offering an invitation for the King to visit Down Under.
I think when the time clears, perhaps after coronation, then he will look to get to Australia.
Buckingham Palace was not the Prime Minister's only stop. His motorcade rolling into Westminster, where he was just a face in the crowd, filing past the coffin and joining the masses for a moment of reflection.
It was a very emotional experience, and you could feel the raw emotion in Westminster Hall.
It was the most sombre of itineraries. Next stop, Lancaster House, where Anthony Albanese and his partner Jodie Hayden signed a book of condolence. A day-long pilgrimage through a city still mourning.
Many might interpret Anthony Albanese's warm royal get-together may be a setback in any push to break away from the monarchy. But this visit is all about respect, not about the Republic.
Now is not the time, and it was a warm gathering.
A Prime Minister's mission is to read the mood of a nation. Right now, there's a sadness overriding any talk of change. In London, Damien Ryan, 9 News.
A surprise visit by the King and the Prince of Wales has delighted crowds queuing to see the Queen lying in state. Thousands spent London's coldest night in months huddled in the massive line as the royals thanked them for their commitment to seeing Her Majesty one last time.
A royal wake-up call for the weary. The King and Prince of Wales dropping by unannounced, father and son overwhelmed by the waiting crowd and their patience near Lambeth Bridge.
How long have you been in this? It means an awful lot you're here, it really does. Thank you so much.
A break for those in line, the royals brought their charm and good humour.
30 hours no sleep.
Did you 30 hours?
Yeah.
Well, you're very good on 30 hours.
We come from Peru. Yeah.
We love you, Mum. Are you Man U fans?
Yeah.
Are you all Man U fans? Yeah. Oh, I can't all be fans.
The walkabouts appear to be a hallmark of the King. The handshakes lingered and there were reassuring gestures. For some little ones, the excitement was just too much.
It was amazing. It made my heart fall out.
Oh, bless.
Mourners shivered through London's coldest morning and night in months, temperatures dropping to 7 degrees.
How were you last night? You wrapped up nice and warm?
After a chilly way towards Westminster Hall, the appearance of the King and the Prince of Wales would surely warm up the crowd, as you can hear. But surely seeing these people would also provide them with some comfort.
She'd never believe us, honestly. She really would. It's amazing.
I said to him to keep up all the amazing work, His Majesty, and he responded to say, you know, I have to because I've got to look after you guys now.
And for those who've been securing the nation, recognition, the King and Prince meeting police and health workers. As the days of mourning come to an end, the crowds will have to wind down as their final chance closes in to see the Queen at Westminster Hall.
It's like losing your mother.
They've given so much to us and given their time when they're grieving.
But this was a moment to reflect together. In London, Tracy Vo, 9 News.
Let's move on. Local heroes from every state and territory of Australia have arrived in London ahead of Queen Elizabeth's funeral. The select group afforded the privilege of a lifetime, a front row seat to history at the special request of the palace.
Australia's community champions now on the streets of London, handpicked to represent the country after a request from Buckingham Palace for 10 everyday Aussies to be invited to the Queen's funeral. Australian of the Year local hero recipient Shanna Wan only just met Her Majesty over Zoom a few months ago. Now that conversation is a treasured memory.
It was a really warm, really laid back, really lovely conversation, and I have to say I managed to sneak in there a bit of a chat about dogs and horses.
Whereabouts do you live?
So my husband and I and our 2 dogs and our 2 horses, I just had to throw that in there because I know you love your dogs and horses. So we live in northwestern New South Wales. In that moment, we were just 2 women who love animals, and it was just really, really real.
Retired police officer Kim Smith almost ignored the royal invitation.
I didn't know whether it was a scam or not.
Good thing Tasmania's local hero recipient thought twice.
I said, how many people are going? She said, 10. I said, I thought there was 50 or 100 people. No, 10. And I said, how many from Tassie? 1. And then it floored me.
For most, the invitation sparked excitement, but Dr. Miriam Rose, who's never travelled to Europe, felt nervous. How did it feel when you got the invite?
A bit scared. I think it was just because of the distance. I've never been here before.
The respected elder, teacher and voice for the stolen generation says she accepted on behalf of those she advocates for.
I had a few hours to think about it, and then I told my family, my husband and Ken, I said, I'm going. I'm doing it for my people and my family and all of Australia.
For this small group of Aussies who will soon be honouring the Queen's life of service, their front row to history is a recognition of their own service to their communities. In just over 24 hours, Cross of Valour recipient Alan Sparks will be joining the Queen's funeral procession. Today he took part in rehearsals inside Westminster Abbey.
This is living history, and walking through Westminster Abbey with what you can foresee perhaps on Monday what it's going to be like to an extent, and where Her Majesty's coffin will be, and we will actually walk past that. Even then it was like sending shivers right through my body.
Australia's armed forces using the cover of night to fine-tune their steps before their every move is on display to a worldwide audience. The march is harder than you think.
It's very difficult to stay in step, a lot of concentration.
But with every step, recognition of the woman who it's all for, Queen Elizabeth, their Captain General.
I am representing tens of thousands of gunners who have served under Her Majesty. So it is a singular privilege for me to be here.
In London, Karianne Greenbank, 9 News.
And we'll have extensive live coverage of the lead-up to the state funeral and the service itself tomorrow here on Channel 9, starting off with the Today Show in the morning.